The void of space erupted with silent fire as the Unity Station's observation deck shuddered beneath Captain Aaliyah Wren's feet. Her breath caught in her throat as the diplomatic vessels, carrying billions of lives from 17 different species, bloomed into expanding clouds of debris and superheated gas. "No," she whispered, pressing her palm against the reinforced viewport. "This can't be happening." But it was. In the silent darkness of space, Earth's warships emerged from their hiding places behind Proxima B's moons, weapons still glowing hot from the first volley. The massacre had begun without warning, without provocation, in the middle of peace negotiations. Behind her, communication systems erupted with panicked voices in a dozen languages. Alliance diplomats and security personnel scrambled for escape pods. But Aaliyah remained frozen, watching the methodical destruction unfold. Her mission, as Harmony Emissary, had been to bridge understanding between humanity and the Galactic Alliance. Years of careful diplomacy, cultural exchange, and trust-building, all erased in an instant of devastating betrayal. Her communicator buzzed with an incoming transmission. With trembling fingers, she accepted it, and a human face appeared on the screen. Dr. Marcus Hale, Earth's lead scientist, gazed at her with cold calculation. "Captain Wren," he said, his voice eerily calm. "I regret that you're witnessing this. Project Purge was never meant to have observers." "What have you done?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "Those ships carried peaceful delegates, billions of civilians." "A necessary demonstration," Dr. Hale replied. "Humanity will not be assimilated or subjugated. This is merely the first phase of our survival strategy." The transmission cut abruptly as an explosion rocked the station. Emergency sirens wailed as the structure's integrity began to fail. Aaliyah's training kicked in, overriding her shock. She sprinted toward the command center, dodging falling debris and panicked personnel. "We need to evacuate," she shouted to the remaining Alliance members. "Earth has declared total war against the Alliance." As she helped coordinate the desperate evacuation, Aaliyah couldn't shake the image of those ships disintegrating, or Dr. Hale's clinical detachment as he described the slaughter. She had grown up believing in humanity's potential for peace. Now, she wondered if she had been catastrophically wrong. The Unity Station, once a symbol of interspecies cooperation, became the first casualty in humanity's unprovoked war against the galaxy. And as Aaliyah's escape pod launched into the darkness, she made a silent vow. This would not be the end. Somehow, she would ensure that no species would ever forget the day humanity chose total war. The real question was what came next. Aaliyah's escape pod drifted through the debris field that had once been the Alliance's diplomatic fleet. The pod's limited life support systems hummed softly as she tried to process what had happened. Her hands trembled as she activated the emergency beacon, a risky move with Earth warships nearby, but her only hope of rescue. The pod's communication system crackled to life. "Alliance vessel identified. Stand by for retrieval." Hours later, a Lumari cruiser extended its docking arms to pull in her pod. When the airlock cycled open, Aaliyah stepped into a scene of controlled chaos. Medical teams rushed past, attending to wounded survivors from other escape pods. Communication officers frantically coordinated with Alliance outposts across the galaxy. In the center of it all stood Sarah Vox, the chief Lumari diplomat, her opalescent skin reflecting the emergency lighting. "Captain Wren," Sarah said, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of extreme distress in Lumari body language. "We feared you were lost." "I wish I had been," Aaliyah replied grimly. "I watched it happen. Sarah, I saw Earth's warships emerge from hiding. This was planned, a deliberate massacre." Sarah guided Aaliyah to the ship's command center, where representatives from the surviving Alliance species had gathered. The tension in the room was palpable. On the main view screen, reports streamed in from across Alliance space. Earth attack fleets had simultaneously struck 7 major Alliance outposts. The coordinated assault had caught everyone unprepared. "They've been planning this for years," growled Kor, a massive Thrax warrior, whose chitinous exoskeleton bore the scars of previous conflicts. "While we negotiated in good faith, they mapped our weaknesses. The death toll is already in the hundreds of billions," reported a Orin analyst, their translucent body pulsing with distress. "And Earth forces are pursuing refugee convoys from the destroyed outposts." Aaliyah felt sick. "We need to organize rescue operations immediately. Every available ship must be diverted to evacuate civilians from Earth's projected attack paths." "Rescue?" Kor's mandibles clicked in agitation. "We should be marshaling our war fleets. The humans have chosen extinction. Theirs, not ours." The room erupted in argument. Half the representatives called for immediate military retaliation. The others insisted on prioritizing civilian evacuation. Aaliyah watched as years of Alliance cooperation threatened to dissolve under the pressure of human aggression. "Enough!" Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. All 4 of her eyes focused on Aaliyah. "Captain Wren, you're our foremost expert on human psychology and tactics. What do you recommend?" Aaliyah closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. When she opened them, her resolve had hardened. "We do both," she said firmly. "We establish a defensive perimeter around our core worlds, while launching immediate rescue operations for the refugee convoys. But we cannot, must not, descend to Earth's level. Total war against humanity would make us no better than they are." "And if they continue their genocide?" asked Kor. "Then we contain the threat," Aaliyah replied. "We isolate Earth's forces, cut their supply lines, and prevent them from acquiring new technologies or resources. But our priority must be saving lives, all lives, including humans who don't support this madness." The debate continued for hours, but eventually, a consensus emerged. The Alliance would establish the Phoenix Rift as a refugee sanctuary while deploying defensive fleets to protect key worlds. And Aaliyah, with her unique understanding of human tactics, would lead a special task force to intercept refugee convoys before Earth's Alpha Strike Force could reach them. As the meeting disbanded, Sarah approached Aaliyah privately. "There's something else you should know," the Lumari diplomat said quietly. "We've intercepted communications suggesting Earth has acquired prototype technology from the old wars. Something called Nova Dawn." Aaliyah felt the blood drain from her face. Nova Dawn had been theoretical, a planet-killing technology developed during the Dark Age before the Alliance formed. All research had been abandoned, and the prototypes supposedly destroyed. "If they've rebuilt Nova Dawn," Aaliyah couldn't finish the thought. "Then this isn't just war," Sarah completed grimly. "It's extinction." The refugee convoy limped through the asteroid field at the edge of the Viridian system. 17 ships of various designs and states of repair, carrying over 3 million displaced beings from a dozen species. Their engines strained against the gravitational eddies, and their shields flickered weakly against the constant bombardment of micrometeorites. From the command deck of her interceptor, the Harmony's Edge, Aaliyah monitored their progress with growing concern. Her sensors indicated Earth pursuit vessels less than 6 hours behind them, the notorious Alpha Strike Force, specially equipped for maximum devastation against civilian targets. "Captain, we've got structural failures on the Orin medical transport," reported her tactical officer. "They can't maintain this pace much longer." Aaliyah studied the tactical display. The convoy was still 12 hours from the relative safety of the Phoenix Rift. They wouldn't make it at this rate. "Signal the convoy to continue on their current heading," she ordered. "Our battle group will remain behind to delay the Earth forces." Her crew exchanged nervous glances. Their 3 interceptors, though well armed, were no match for the Alpha Strike Force's 5 destroyer-class warships. "We're not planning to defeat them," Aaliyah explained, reading their concern. Just slow them down long enough for the convoy to reach safety. She turned to her communications officer. Contact Thrax Warrior Corps. Tell him we need that special package we discussed deployed at these coordinates. As her crew prepared for the coming engagement, Aaliyah retreated to her quarters for a moment of solitude. She removed a small hollow projector from her pocket and activated it. A three-dimensional image appeared, Aaliyah as a child, standing beside a smiling human man. Dr. Marcus Hale had been her adoptive father after her parents died in the Centauri conflict. He had raised her, educated her, encouraged her to join the Alliance as a bridge between humanity and other species. And now he commanded Project Purge, orchestrating the slaughter of billions. The contradiction tore at her. How could the man who had taught her compassion now embrace genocide? What had changed him? Or had this darkness always lurked beneath his benevolent facade? A chime from her communicator interrupted her thoughts. Captain, Earth vessels have increased speed. Intercept in 4 hours. Aaliyah deactivated the holoprojector and straightened her uniform. Personal feelings would have to wait. Right now, 3 million refugees were counting on her to ensure they weren't added to the already staggering death toll. 4 hours later, the Harmony's Edge and its companion vessels took position in the densest part of the asteroid field. Aaliyah had ordered their engines and weapons powered down to minimize detection. They waited in the darkness as the Alpha Strike Force approached. Now, Aaliyah commanded when the Earth vessels crossed the designated threshold. Throughout the asteroid field, hundreds of miniature projection devices activated simultaneously. The Thrax design technology created perfect holographic duplicates of refugee ships, complete with false energy signatures and communication chatter. The asteroid field suddenly appeared to contain not 17 refugee vessels, but over 200. As expected, the Alpha Strike Force hesitated, their formation breaking as they attempted to analyze the sudden proliferation of targets. Their sensors would eventually detect the deception, but not before they wasted precious time investigating. Phase 2, Aaliyah ordered. Her tactical officer deployed a series of autonomous drone fighters. The small, unmanned craft darted between asteroids, firing precision strikes at the Earth vessel's external sensor arrays. They wouldn't cause significant damage, but they would force the warships to engage their defensive systems. On the main view screen, Aaliyah watched as the Alpha Strike Force scattered, pursuing holographic targets and drone fighters in multiple directions. Their coordinated attack pattern had dissolved into confusion, exactly as she had planned. Captain, we've bought the convoy at least 6 hours, her tactical officer reported. But the Earth commanders are adapting quickly. They'll regroup soon. That's all we need, Aaliyah replied. Signal our engines to full power. We'll rendezvous with the convoy at the Phoenix Rift entry point. As the Harmony's Edge accelerated away from the asteroid field, Aaliyah allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. They had succeeded without firing a single lethal shot, proving that even in war, alternatives to slaughter existed. Whether that lesson would matter in the greater conflict remained to be seen. But for now, 3 million refugees would live another day. In a war of extinction, that counted as a victory. The Phoenix Rift stretched before them, a vast region of space distorted by the gravitational influence of a collapsed neutron star. Swirling clouds of luminescent gas created corridors of relatively stable space within the otherwise hazardous expanse. To most navigators, the rift represented a dangerous obstacle to be avoided. To the desperate refugees of the Alliance, it had become their only sanctuary. Aaliyah's small fleet escorted the refugee convoy through the outermost boundary of the rift. The massive refugee processing station, Sanctuary, loomed ahead, a hastily assembled structure built from repurposed mining platforms and decommissioned military installations. Already, millions of displaced beings crowded its docking rings and habitat modules. Another successful delivery, Sarah Vox said, as she joined Aaliyah on the observation deck. The Lumari diplomat had been coordinating refugee placement throughout the crisis. That's nearly 5 million saved by your interception teams in the past week alone. Aaliyah nodded, but her expression remained troubled. It's not enough. For every convoy we save, 3 more are lost. Earth's forces are adapting to our tactics, becoming more aggressive in their pursuit. Which is why the Alliance Council has requested your presence, Sarah said. There's an emergency session in 1 hour. General Vok has been insistent about a change in strategy. The mention of the Thrax general made Aaliyah's shoulders tense. Vok represented the growing militant faction within the Alliance, those who believed that the only appropriate response to Earth's aggression was equally devastating retaliation. An hour later, Aaliyah stood before the hastily assembled Alliance Council in Sanctuary's central command hub. Representatives from 12 species occupied the tiered seating, their faces grim. At the center of the chamber, a holographic display showed the current state of the conflict. Red indicators marking Earth-controlled space steadily expanding across the galaxy map. General Vok, his massive Thrax frame dominating the speaker's platform, gestured angrily at the display. While we rescue handfuls of refugees, Earth consolidates its gains. They've captured 3 Alliance technology centers in the past week alone. Our intelligence indicates they're reverse engineering our most advanced defensive systems. What would you have us do, General? Asked Aaliyah, stepping forward. Abandon the refugees to die? Vok's compound eyes fixed on her. I would have us fight, Captain Wren. With everything we have, the humans understand only one language: overwhelming force. You're proposing we become what we're fighting against, Aaliyah countered. Total war against Earth would cause billions of human casualties, most of them civilians who have no say in their government's actions. A regrettable necessity, Vok replied coldly. One the humans themselves established as acceptable when they launched Project Purge. The chamber erupted in debate. Aaliyah watched as more and more representatives nodded in agreement with Vok's position. Fear was overcoming reason, exactly as Earth had intended. If the Alliance embraced total war, they would validate humanity's narrative that alien species were an existential threat, requiring preemptive elimination. There's another option, a new voice interrupted. Nix, the interplanetary journalist whose recordings of the initial attack had galvanized public opinion across the Alliance, stepped into the light. The Orvani's gelatinous form shifted nervously as all eyes turned to him. I've been analyzing the communications intercepts from Earth military channels, Nix continued. Their fleet movements suggest they're protecting something. A research installation on Calyx, a planet in supposedly neutral territory. Aaliyah frowned. Calyx was declared uninhabitable after the radiation storms a century ago. Precisely why it makes the perfect hiding place, Nix replied. My sources suggest this is where they're developing the Nova Dawn technology, and possibly storing the prototypes. The chamber fell silent. Nova Dawn, a weapon designed to trigger artificial supernova, capable of sterilizing entire star systems. If Earth deployed such weapons, no amount of refugee sanctuaries would save the Alliance species. We need confirmation, Aaliyah said finally. And if true, a targeted operation to neutralize the threat? General Vok clicked his mandibles in what passed for Thrax laughter. And who would lead such a mission? You, Captain, the human sympathizer. Aaliyah met his compound gaze steadily. Yes, General, me. Because I understand humans better than anyone in this room, including their weaknesses. And because you hope to avoid what must be done, Vok countered. Your connection to Dr. Hale is well known. Captain, can we trust you to act decisively if confronted with the architect of our genocide? The accusation hung in the air. Aaliyah felt the Council's collective gaze weighing her loyalty, her resolve. They knew of her relationship with Dr. Hale. How could they not? It had been her primary qualification as Harmony emissary. Now, it cast doubt on her every decision. My loyalty is to life. General, she said quietly, All life, including human life. But I will not stand by while Earth deploys weapons that could extinguish entire civilizations. If Nova Dawn exists, I will ensure it never leaves Calyx. After hours of debate, the Council reached a compromise. Aaliyah would lead a small, elite team to infiltrate Calyx and verify the existence of Nova Dawn. If confirmed, they would neutralize the threat by any means necessary. Meanwhile, the Alliance would continue refugee evacuation while preparing defensive positions should the mission fail. As the Council disbanded, Sarah approached Aaliyah privately. "You know what Vok really wants," the Lumari diplomat said softly. "If you find Nova Dawn, he expects you to secure it for the Alliance, not destroy it." "I know," Aaliyah replied grimly. "He believes we need our own doomsday weapon to force Earth to the negotiating table." "And what do you believe, Aaliyah?" She closed her eyes briefly, the weight of billions of lives pressing down on her conscience. "I believe that the moment we use such a weapon, even as a threat, we lose everything that makes us different from Project Purge. There has to be another way." Sarah's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, concern, followed by resolve. "Then find it, Captain. Because if you don't, Vok and his faction will ensure that humanity's total war becomes the galaxy's final war." The infiltration team assembled in the hangar bay of the Harmony's Edge. A small, elite group chosen for their specialized skills. Kor, the Thrax warrior, would provide the muscle. Sarah Vox, with her diplomatic skills and empathic abilities, would help navigate any potential negotiations. Nix, the Orvani journalist, insisted on accompanying them to document whatever they discovered. And Aaliyah would lead them, her knowledge of human security systems and psychology their primary advantage. Their vessel was a modified scout ship, small enough to evade detection, but equipped with advanced stealth technology borrowed from the Lumari Intelligence Service. They had named it Truth Seeker, a reminder of their primary mission, to find evidence of Nova Dawn's existence. "Final preparations complete," reported Kor, securing their weapons cache. "Though I still believe a direct assault would be more efficient." "Efficiency isn't our goal," Aaliyah reminded him. "Precision is. We need to confirm Nova Dawn's existence and assess its deployment status without alerting Earth forces to our presence." The journey to Calyx took 3 days, navigating through unstable wormhole corridors to avoid Earth patrols. When they finally emerged in the Calyx system, the planet loomed before them, a desolate world of rust-colored deserts and toxic oceans. Its atmosphere still shimmering with the residual radiation from the storms that had rendered it uninhabitable a century earlier. Their sensors detected the research facility immediately, a sprawling complex built into the side of a massive crater, shielded from the hostile environment and orbital detection by advanced energy barriers. Earth battlecruisers patrolled the space around the planet, confirming Nix's intelligence about the site's importance. "How do we get past those?" Sarah asked, indicating the warships. Aaliyah studied the patrol patterns. "We don't need to. Look at their formation. They're focused outward, expecting an attack from space. They're not watching for anything coming from the surface." She plotted a course that would take them through Calyx's turbulent upper atmosphere, using the radiation interference to mask their approach. The Truth Seeker shuddered violently as they descended, external temperatures rising dangerously as the ship's cooling systems struggled against the friction. "Hull integrity at 60%, Kor reported tensely. "We cannot maintain this trajectory for long." "Just a few more minutes," Aaliyah urged, her hands steady on the controls despite the ship's violent pitching. "There, that ravine leads directly to the facility's southern perimeter." They landed in the shadow of a massive rock formation, 2 kilometers from the facility. The planet's hostile environment meant they would need environmental suits to survive outside, a limitation that would make combat difficult if discovered. "We go in quiet," Aaliyah instructed, as they suited up. Our objective is intelligence gathering first. If we confirm Novadon's presence, then we can discuss neutralization options. The landscape of Calyx was eerily beautiful in its desolation. Crystalline formations jutted from the rust-colored soil, glowing faintly with radioactive energy. The sky above them swirled with toxic clouds in shades of amber and crimson. Even through their suits' filtration systems, the air smelled of metal and decay. They approached the facility through a series of natural tunnels that honeycombed the crater wall. Nyx's gelatinous form proved valuable, allowing him to slip through narrow crevices to scout ahead. When they reached the facility's outer barrier, Core deployed a specialized Thrax device that created a temporary disruption in the energy field, just large enough for them to slip through one by one. Inside the perimeter, they encountered the first signs of human presence. Automated security drones patrolling in precise patterns, their sensors sweeping the compound methodically. Aaliyah recognized the design, an advanced version of systems she had helped develop during her time with Earth's defense forces. Their behavioral algorithms are predictable, she whispered to her team. Wait for the overlapping sweep, then move during the 3-second reset. One by one, they darted between patrols, making their way deeper into the facility. The architecture became more imposing. Reinforced walls of a material Aaliyah didn't recognize, security checkpoints with DNA scanners, and armed guards in environmental suits similar to their own. We need access credentials, Sarah observed as they hid in a maintenance alcove, watching scientists swipe specialized cards at a heavily fortified entrance. Aaliyah nodded. Core, can you create a distraction at the north perimeter? Nothing destructive, just enough to draw attention. The Thrax warrior moved off silently, his massive form surprisingly graceful for its size. Minutes later, alarms blared from the opposite side of the compound. Guards and security personnel rushed toward the disturbance, leaving only a skeleton crew at the checkpoint. Now, Aaliyah whispered. Sarah stepped forward, her Lumari empathic abilities reaching out to touch the mind of the remaining guard. The man's expression went slack for a moment, before he calmly walked to a control panel and deactivated the security protocols. He then removed his access card and held it out, his eyes unfocused. Thank you, Sarah said softly, taking the card. You should rest now. You've been working too hard. The guard nodded mechanically and sat down at his station, head drooping as if suddenly overcome with exhaustion. He'll remember nothing when he wakes, Sarah assured them. But we should hurry. I can't maintain influence over the security systems for long. Beyond the checkpoint lay the heart of the facility, a vast, circular chamber dominated by a central platform. On it stood a device unlike anything Aaliyah had ever seen, a perfect sphere of obsidian material, suspended in an energy field that pulsed with a rhythm reminiscent of a heartbeat. Surrounding the sphere, technicians monitored displays showing what appeared to be stellar cartography, maps of Alliance star systems with specific coordinates highlighted. Nova Dawn, Nyx whispered, his translucent form rippling with agitation. It's real. Aaliyah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the environmental controls of her suit. The weapon before them was elegant in its simplicity, a device no larger than a transport shuttle, yet capable of triggering chain reactions within stars that would cause them to collapse and then explode with force far beyond a natural supernova. They've built more than one, Core observed, pointing to a display showing multiple tracking signatures. At least 7 units, deployed to different locations, all positioned near Alliance core worlds, Sarah added grimly. They could sterilize our entire civilization with a single command. Aaliyah moved closer to one of the monitoring stations, careful to remain unseen by the technicians. The display showed a countdown sequence, less than 48 hours remaining until something called Extinction Protocol would activate. We need to copy this data, she decided. The Alliance must know what they're planning. As Nyx began discreetly recording the displays, A familiar voice echoed through the chamber. Aaliyah froze, then carefully peered around a support column to confirm what her ears already knew. Dr. Marcus Hale strode into the chamber, his tall frame made more imposing by the specialized environmental suit he wore. Unlike the standard models, his was decorated with the insignia of Project Purge, a stylized phoenix rising from a field of stars. "Accelerate the deployment schedule," he ordered the chief technician. "Alliance activity in the Phoenix Rift suggests they're gathering forces for a counteroffensive. We need Nova Dawn operational before they can mobilize." "But Doctor, the targeting systems aren't fully calibrated," protested the technician. "We can't guarantee precision strikes without another 72 hours of testing." Hale's expression hardened. "Precision is a luxury we no longer have. The survival of humanity depends on striking first and completely. Prepare all units for immediate deployment." Aaliyah felt Sarah's hand on her arm, a gentle restraint. The Lumari diplomat sensed the turmoil within her, the conflicting impulses to confront the man who had raised her and to complete their mission undetected. "We have what we need," Sarah whispered. "We should withdraw while we can." But before they could retreat, a security alarm blared throughout the facility. On the main display, a schematic of the compound appeared, with a section highlighted in red, the exact location where they stood. "Radiation anomalies detected in Sector 7, announced an automated voice. "Possible contamination breach." Their environmental suits, designed to protect them from Calyx's hostile atmosphere, had inadvertently triggered the facility's radiation detection systems. "Intruders!" shouted one of the technicians, pointing directly at their hiding place. Security personnel swarmed into the chamber, weapons raised. Dr. Hale turned slowly, his eyes widening as he recognized Aaliyah, despite her suit's obscuring helmet. "Captain Wren," he said, his voice a mixture of surprise and something that might have been regret. "I should have known the Alliance would send you." Kor moved with blinding speed, his Thrax combat reflexes deploying a defensive barrier that deflected the first volley of security fire. Nix and Sarah took cover behind equipment consoles, while Aaliyah found herself exposed, face to face with her former mentor. "Why, Marcus," she demanded, the formal address forgotten in her anger. "You taught me that cooperation was the path to survival, that humanity's future lay in peaceful exchange with other species." "I taught you what I believed then," Hale replied, signaling his security forces to hold their fire. "Before I understood the true nature of the universe. Species compete. Aaliyah. They eliminate rivals or are eliminated themselves. It's the fundamental law of existence. That's not science. It's fear, dressed up as evolutionary theory." Aaliyah countered. "The Alliance has never threatened Earth's sovereignty." "Their very existence is a threat," Hale insisted. "Their technologies, their resources, their biological advantages, all of it combines to ensure humanity's eventual subordination or extinction. Project Purge is merely preemptive self-defense on a cosmic scale." Around them, the standoff continued. Kor maintained the defensive barrier, but Aaliyah could see it weakening as Earth security forces brought heavier weapons to bear. "You're talking about genocide," Aaliyah said, her voice breaking. "Trillions of innocent lives." "I'm talking about survival," Hale corrected. "Ours or theirs. There is no middle ground, no compromise that doesn't eventually lead to our extinction." He took a step toward her, his expression softening. "Join us, Aaliyah. You're human, despite your sympathies. Your expertise could help make this transition more humane." For a moment, Aaliyah saw the man who had raised her, the brilliant scientist who had once championed interspecies cooperation. What had changed him? What fear or ambition had twisted his idealism into this grotesque justification for mass murder? The answer came to her as she glanced at the Nova Dawn prototype. The weapon itself was the corruption, the intoxicating belief that having the power to end civilizations meant having the right to use it. "No," she said firmly. "I won't help you commit the greatest atrocity in galactic history." Hale's expression hardened. "Then you die with them." He turned to his security forces. "Eliminate the intruders. Secure the prototype." Chaos erupted as both sides opened fire. Kor roared a Thrax battle cry as he charged the security forces, his massive form absorbing punishment that would have killed most species instantly. Sarah used her empathic abilities to confuse and disorient the human soldiers, while Nyx's amorphous body allowed him to slip past the fighting toward the facility's communication array. Aaliyah found herself moving toward the central platform, where the Nova Dawn prototype hung suspended. If they couldn't escape with the intelligence, they could at least ensure this weapon never left Calyx. She drew her sidearm, a non-lethal pulse weapon that could disrupt electronic systems, and aimed at the device's control console. Before she could fire, Dr. Hale tackled her from behind. They fell together, rolling across the platform as alarms continued to blare around them. "I won't let you destroy it," Hale growled, struggling to restrain her. "This is humanity's salvation." "It's humanity's damnation," Aaliyah countered, breaking free from his grip. "If you use Nova Dawn, you ensure that humanity will be remembered only as the species that murdered the galaxy." Their struggle continued as the battle raged around them. Security reinforcements poured into the chamber, gradually overwhelming Kor's formidable defenses. Sarah had been injured. Her environmental suit breached, exposing her to Calyx's toxic atmosphere. Only Nyx remained undetected, having reached the communication systems. Aaliyah found herself pinned against the Nova Dawn control console. Hale's greater physical strength, giving him the advantage. "You've lost, Aaliyah," he panted, his face inches from hers. "The prototype will launch in minutes. Earth will be safe." "Safe and alone," she replied. "Is that really the future you want for humanity? To be the species that survived by becoming monsters?" Something flickered in Hale's eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or a remnant of the idealism he had once embodied. Aaliyah seized the moment of hesitation, activating her communicator. "Nyx, now!" Across the chamber, the Orvani journalist accessed the facility's broadcast system. Suddenly, every display in the room showed the same image, the original attack on the Unity station, recorded from multiple angles. The methodical destruction of unarmed diplomatic vessels. The deaths of billions of civilians whose only crime had been seeking peace. "This is what Project Purge really looks like," Aaliyah said, her voice cutting through the momentary silence that fell over the chamber. Not abstract statistics, not theoretical threats. Real people, real species, annihilated without warning or mercy. The security forces faltered, many of them seeing the unfiltered reality of Project Purge for the first time. Some lowered their weapons, expressions of horror visible through their helmet visors. Dr. Hale's grip on Aaliyah loosened as he too stared at the displays. "They don't understand," he whispered. "They don't see the necessity." "There is no necessity that justifies this," Aaliyah replied. "And deep down, you know it." With a sudden burst of strength, she broke free from his grasp and fired her pulse weapon at the Nova Dawn control console. The energy discharge cascaded through the system, disrupting the suspension field. The obsidian sphere dropped to the platform with a heavy thud, its surface cracking to reveal a core of swirling energy. "What have you done?" Hale cried, lunging for the damaged prototype. "Prevented extinction," Aaliyah answered, intercepting him. On all sides, the sphere's cracks widened, releasing pulses of energy that interfered with the facility's systems. Emergency containment protocols activated automatically, sealing the chamber as radiation levels rose. "We need to evacuate," Aaliyah shouted to her team. "The prototype is destabilizing." Kor fought his way to Sarah, lifting the injured Lumari diplomat despite his own wounds. Nyx abandoned the communication console to rejoin them. His form contracted to its most dense state for protection against the increasing radiation. Dr. Hale stood transfixed, watching as his life's work began to self-destruct. "You don't understand what you've done," he said quietly. "The other prototypes will still launch. This changes nothing." "It changes everything," Aaliyah replied, grabbing his arm. "Come with us, Marcus. Help us stop the other launches. It's not too late to choose a different path." For a moment, it seemed he might agree. Then his expression hardened again. "My path was chosen long ago, Aaliyah, as was yours. Apparently." He pulled away from her, moving toward the destabilizing prototype. "Go! Get your team out. This facility will be a radioactive crater within the hour." "Marcus, don't! Go!" he roared. "Let me do this one thing right." Understanding dawned on Aaliyah. He wasn't staying to save the prototype. He was staying to ensure it was completely destroyed, preventing its technology from falling into anyone's hands. It was, in its way, an act of atonement. With a final look at the man who had raised her, Aaliyah rejoined her team. They fought their way through the confusion of the evacuating facility, eventually reaching the surface as emergency alarms echoed across the compound. The Truth Seeker waited where they had left it, partially hidden by the crystalline formations. As they lifted off, the ground beneath the facility began to collapse, forming a sinkhole that swallowed buildings and equipment alike. The destabilized Nova Dawn prototype had triggered a chain reaction in Calyx's already unstable geological structure. From orbit, they watched as a massive energy discharge erupted from the planet's surface. The death throes of the prototype and, Aaliyah knew, of Dr. Marcus Hale. "The facility is completely destroyed," reported Core from the sensor station. "But according to the data we recovered, 7 other Nova Dawn devices are already deployed." "And we have their coordinates," Aaliyah said grimly. "We need to contact the Alliance immediately. Every available ship must be dispatched to neutralize those weapons before they can activate." As the Truth Seeker accelerated away from Calyx, Aaliyah allowed herself a moment of grief for the man who had been her mentor and father figure. Whatever he had become, whatever atrocities he had committed. There had been a moment at the end when the scientist who believed in cooperation had resurfaced. Perhaps that meant there was hope for humanity after all, if they could prevent the looming extinction event before it was too late. The Alliance fleet assembled at the edge of the Phoenix Rift, a hastily organized force comprising vessels from 12 different species. What they lacked in coordination, they made up for in determination. The data recovered from Calyx had confirmed their worst fears. 7 Nova Dawn devices positioned near major Alliance worlds, programmed to trigger stellar collapse within 24 hours. On the command deck of the Alliance flagship, Celestial Harmony, Aaliyah briefed the assembled captains and military leaders. The holographic display showed the locations of the Nova Dawn devices, each nestled within a small stealth station in close proximity to a target star. "The devices are designed to initiate a chain reaction within the stellar core," she explained. "Once activated, we would have approximately 3 hours before the star collapses and then explodes with force far beyond a natural supernova. The resulting radiation would sterilize all planets in the system and potentially damage neighboring systems as well." "How do we neutralize them?" asked the Oran Fleet commander, her translucent form pulsing with urgency. "Each device has a quantum-locked control system," Aaliyah replied. "They can only be deactivated with the proper authorization codes, or by physical destruction." "Then we destroy them," General Vok declared. The Thrax commander had assumed leadership of the military response, his aggressive tactics temporarily embraced in the face of extinction. "We target each station with overwhelming force." "It's not that simple," Aaliyah cautioned. "The stations are heavily defended by Earth's most advanced weaponry. Direct assault would be costly and might trigger the devices prematurely." "What alternative do you propose, Captain?" Vok demanded. Aaliyah took a deep breath. "Infiltration teams, small, fast vessels that can approach undetected, while the main fleet engages the Earth Defense Forces as a distraction. A suicide mission, observed Sarah Vox, who had recovered sufficiently from her injuries to join the planning session. The infiltration teams would have minimal chance of escape after neutralizing the devices. I know, Aaliyah acknowledged. That's why I'll lead the primary team myself. The chamber erupted in debate. Some argued that Aaliyah's expertise made her too valuable to risk on such a dangerous mission. Others, including General Vok, questioned whether her human heritage might compromise her resolve at the critical moment. My heritage is precisely why I must go, Aaliyah countered. I understand Earth security systems better than anyone here. And... She hesitated, then continued firmly. I bear a responsibility, as a human, to prevent this atrocity from defining my species for all time. In the end, they agreed to her plan. 7 teams were assembled, 1 for each Nova Dawn device. Aaliyah would lead the assault on the primary control station, which intelligence suggested could potentially be used to deactivate all 7 devices simultaneously if they could access its command protocols. As the fleet prepared for departure, Aaliyah recorded a message for transmission throughout Alliance space. To all species of the Galactic Alliance, today, we face the greatest threat in our collective history. Earth's Project Purge seeks nothing less than our complete extermination through weapons designed to destroy entire star systems. But remember this, Project Purge does not represent all of humanity. Even now, there are humans who stand with us against this genocide. When this conflict ends, as it must, remember that distinction. Do not let the actions of those who chose war define an entire species. We fight today not just for survival, but for the principle that no species should be condemned for the crimes of its leaders. The message was broadcast in every language of the Alliance. Then, with solemn determination, the fleet departed for its desperate mission. The primary control station orbited a neutron star in a remote system, a location chosen for its natural radiation, which helped mask the Nova Dawn control signals. Aaliyah's infiltration vessel, a modified stealth scout named Hope's Whisper, approached cautiously as the main Alliance fleet engaged Earth's defensive perimeter in a massive battle. Earth forces are fully committed to the defense, reported Kor, who had insisted on joining her team despite his injuries from Calyx. Our window of opportunity is open. Beside him, Nyx monitored communications. The other infiltration teams report similar situations at their targets. All are proceeding with infiltration. Aaliyah guided their vessel through the chaos of battle, using the neutron star's radiation bands to mask their approach. When they reached the station's outer perimeter, they deployed specialized boarding pods, one-person vessels designed to attach to the station's hull and cut through to the interior. Remember, Aaliyah instructed her team as they prepared to launch. Our primary objective is to access the central control system. If we can transmit the deactivation codes to all 7 devices, we prevent extinction without further bloodshed. And if we can't? Asked Sarah, who had volunteered despite still recovering from her injuries. Then we destroy this station and hope the other teams succeed with their targets, Aaliyah replied grimly. Failure is not an option. The boarding pods launched simultaneously, streaking toward different sections of the control station. Aaliyah's pod struck the hull, near what intelligence suggested was the command center. The pod's cutting mechanisms activated automatically, carving through the reinforced material to create an entry point. When the breach was complete, Aaliyah entered the station in a specialized combat suit. The artificial gravity fluctuated from the battle damage, causing her to drift momentarily before her boots' magnetic systems engaged. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across the corridor as she oriented herself. I'm in, she reported through her secure communicator. Section Alpha 7 proceeding to the command center. Similar confirmations came from the rest of her team, each having breached different sections of the station. Their plan was to approach the command center from multiple directions, overwhelming any defensive measures through coordinated assault. Aaliyah encountered the first resistance near a security checkpoint. Two Earth soldiers in combat armor. She disabled them with precise shots from her pulse weapon, calibrated to disrupt their armor's electronic systems without causing lethal harm. Throughout the mission planning, she had insisted on minimizing casualties, a stance that General Vok had reluctantly accepted only because they needed her expertise. As she approached the command center, alarms blared throughout the station. Her team's presence had been detected, and Earth forces were mobilizing to protect the Nova Dawn controls. "They're sealing the command center," Core reported urgently. "Blast doors activating." Aaliyah broke into a run, pushing her suit's systems to maximum output. She rounded the final corner just as the massive blast doors began to close. With a desperate lunge, she slid through the narrowing gap, her suit scraping against the edges as the doors sealed behind her. Inside the command center, a dozen technicians and security personnel stared at her in shock. At the central console stood a woman in an officer's uniform, her insignia identifying her as Commander Ellis, one of Dr. Hale's most trusted lieutenants. "Captain Wren," Ellis said, her hand hovering over a control panel. "Dr. Hale warned us you might attempt something like this." "Step away from the console, Commander," Aaliyah ordered, her pulse weapon raised. "The Alliance fleet has neutralized your defenses. This station will fall within the hour." Ellis smiled thinly. "By which time Nova Dawn will have activated. Your victory will be brief and Pyrrhic." "It doesn't have to end this way," Aaliyah insisted, taking a careful step forward. "Billions of lives, including human lives, depend on the choice you make right now." "My orders are clear," Ellis replied. "Humanity must survive, whatever the cost." "At the cost of its soul," Aaliyah challenged. "What kind of survival is that?" For a moment, doubt flickered across Ellis's face. Then her expression hardened again. "Philosophical debates are a luxury we cannot afford." Her hand moved toward a red activation control. Aaliyah fired, her pulse weapon striking Ellis's arm with pinpoint accuracy. The commander cried out in pain as her limb went temporarily numb from the neural disruption. Security personnel surged forward, but Aaliyah had already leapt toward the central console. The firefight was brief but intense. Aaliyah used her combat training to disable rather than kill, each precise shot targeting armor joints and weapon systems. When the last security officer fell, she turned her attention to the Nova Dawn control interface. "I've reached the command console," she reported to her team. "Beginning override sequence." The system was complex, a quantum-encrypted interface designed to prevent exactly the kind of interference she was attempting. But Dr. Hale had unwittingly prepared her for this moment through years of shared research. She recognized his programming style, the logical structures that reflected his particular genius, and his particular blindness. For all his brilliance, Hale had never truly understood the non-human species he feared. His security protocols focused on preventing attacks using Alliance technology, not recognizing that Lumari empathic algorithms or Thrax quantum disruption techniques might approach the problem differently. Aaliyah integrated the specialized code her team had developed, a hybrid approach that combined multiple species technologies in ways Earth scientists had never anticipated. The control system resisted, adaptive countermeasures activating automatically. "Captain, we're detecting energy spikes from the Nova Dawn network," Nix reported urgently. "They're initiating premature activation." Aaliyah's fingers flew across the interface. "Transmitting override codes to all devices simultaneously." She hit the final command sequence and held her breath as the system processed the contradictory instructions. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, status indicators for the 7 Nova Dawn devices changed from red to amber. "Device deactivation in progress," announced the system's automated voice. "Warning: manual authorization required for complete shutdown." A verification screen appeared, requesting a command-level authorization code. Aaliyah's heart sank. They hadn't anticipated this final security measure. "We need Hale's personal code," she told her team. "Without it." "Use this," said a weak voice from behind her. Commander Ellis had dragged herself to a sitting position, blood seeping from a wound in her side that Aaliyah hadn't noticed during the firefight. The woman's face was pale, but her eyes were clear and determined. "Why?" Aaliyah asked, suspicious of a trap. "Because Dr. Hale is dead," Ellis replied. "And before he died at Calyx, he transmitted one final message to all Project Purge commanders." She coughed, wincing in pain. "He said if you managed to reach this point, we should listen to you, that his daughter had proven stronger than his fear." Ellis recited a 16-digit alphanumeric sequence. "His personal override. Use it." Aaliyah hesitated only briefly before entering the code. The system processed it, verification indicators flashing as each Nova Dawn device accepted the shutdown command. "Complete deactivation confirmed," announced the system. "Nova Dawn network offline." Throughout the command center, displays showed the 7 devices powering down, their deadly potential neutralized. Aaliyah released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "All infiltration teams, report status," she requested. One by one, confirmations came in. 6 of the 7 teams had successfully reached their targets and verified deactivation. The 7th had encountered heavy resistance, but reported that their target appeared to be shutting down, despite their inability to reach the control room. "It worked," Aaliyah said, relief evident in her voice. "All devices neutralized." She turned back to Commander Ellis, who had slumped further against the wall. The woman's breathing was labored, her wound more serious than it had initially appeared. "Why did Hale change his mind?" Aaliyah asked, kneeling beside her. Ellis managed a weak smile. "He didn't. Not really. He believed humanity needed protection. But in his final message, he said that extinction wasn't protection. It was surrender to our worst instincts." She coughed again. "He said you had shown him a better way, even if it was too late for him to follow it." Aaliyah felt tears prick her eyes. Even at the end, some part of the man who had raised her, the scientist who believed in cooperation and understanding, had reasserted itself. "Medical team to the command center," she ordered through her communicator. "We have wounded requiring immediate attention." As her team secured the station and coordinated with the Alliance fleet, Aaliyah accessed the station's communication array. There was one final task to complete, perhaps the most important of all. She initiated a broadcast on all frequencies, directed to both Earth forces and the Alliance fleet. "This is Captain Aaliyah Wren. The Nova Dawn devices have been neutralized. The threat of stellar destruction has ended. To all combatants, I urge an immediate cessation of hostilities. We have stood at the precipice of mutual extinction and stepped back. Let that shared experience be the foundation for what comes next. To the leaders of Earth, your primary weapon has been disabled, but your people remain. The Alliance does not seek your destruction, only your peaceful cooperation. I offer myself as mediator for whatever negotiations must follow. To the Alliance Council, remember your founding principles. Justice, not vengeance, must guide our response. Billions of humans had no part in Project Purge. They deserve the same consideration we would show any species. The choice before us is clear. We can continue this conflict until one or both sides are decimated, or we can forge a new understanding based on our shared desire to live. I choose life. I invite you all to do the same." As her message echoed across the battlefield, the firing gradually ceased. Vessels from both sides maintained their positions, but held their fire as her words sank in. It would not be a simple or easy peace. The wounds inflicted were too deep, the trust too thoroughly shattered. But it was a beginning, a fragile moment of possibility snatched from the jaws of extinction. 3 months later, Aaliyah stood on the observation deck of the new Unity station. Unlike its predecessor, This station orbited a neutral world at the boundary between Earth and Alliance space. Its construction had been a joint project, a tangible symbol of the tentative cooperation emerging from the ashes of conflict. The Phoenix Rift, once a temporary sanctuary, had become a permanent autonomous zone for refugees displaced by the war. Millions of beings from dozens of species now called it home, their cultural and technological exchanges creating a unique society, unlike anything that had existed before. Sarah Vox approached, her Lumari form adorned with the ceremonial vestments of her new role as High Diplomat. "The final draft of the Disarmament Covenant is ready for presentation," she informed Aaliyah. "All 17 Alliance species have signaled their approval." "And Earth?" Aaliyah asked. "Their delegation has requested some minor amendments. But essentially, yes." Sarah's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Satisfaction, followed by cautious optimism. "They've agreed to comprehensive inspections and technological limitations in exchange for guaranteed non-aggression and cultural exchange programs." It was more than Aaliyah had dared hope for in the chaotic aftermath of the Nova Dawn crisis. Earth's more militant factions had initially resisted any form of reconciliation. But the revelation of Project Purge's true scope had shocked the human population. Public opinion had turned decisively against the architects of genocide, paving the way for more moderate voices to emerge. Similarly, within the Alliance, General Vok and his hardliners had pushed for severe punitive measures against humanity. But the courage of the infiltration teams, especially the human members who had risked everything to prevent Nova Dawn's activation, had provided a powerful counter-narrative. "Captain Wren," called Nix, hurrying across the deck. The Orvani journalist had become something of a celebrity for his documentation of the conflict and peace process. "They're ready for you in the assembly chamber." Aaliyah nodded, straightening her uniform. As the newly appointed Concord emissary, a position created specifically to oversee the peace process, she would preside over the signing ceremony. The assembly chamber hushed as she entered. Representatives from all Alliance species sat alongside the Earth delegation in a circular arrangement that emphasized equality. At the center stood a simple pedestal bearing the Disarmament Covenant, a document that would establish the framework for lasting peace. Aaliyah took her position at the speaker's platform, looking out over the assembled delegates. So many different forms, biologies, and cultures, yet all united by the shared experience of having faced extinction and chosen another path. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "We gather today not to forget the past, but to ensure it does not determine our future. No species will ever forget the day humanity chose total war. That memory will remain as a solemn reminder of what happens when fear overcomes reason. But today, we choose something different. We choose to recognize that diversity is not a threat, but a strength. That cooperation yields greater security than isolation. That even after the most profound betrayal, reconciliation remains possible. The Disarmament Covenant before you is not merely a treaty limiting weapons technology. It is a commitment to communication before confrontation, to understanding before judgment, to the principle that all sentient life deserves protection and respect. As we sign this document, we acknowledge that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice, not the elimination of differences, but the celebration of them, not the end of history, but the beginning of a new chapter written together. One by one, representatives approached the pedestal to add their signatures or biological markers to the covenant. When the Earth delegate, a silver-haired woman who had been among the first to denounce Project Purge, took her turn, a palpable tension filled the chamber. Her hand hesitated briefly over the document before she signed with a firm, decisive stroke. A collective exhalation seemed to pass through the assembly. It was done, not an ending, but a beginning. Later, as the delegates mingled in the reception that followed, Aaliyah found a moment of solitude on a small balcony overlooking the stars. The galaxy spread before her. Billions of worlds, trillions of lives, countless possibilities. Kor joined her, his massive Thrax form moving with characteristic precision. "You should be celebrating," he observed. "Your vision has prevailed." "Not my vision," Aaliyah corrected. "A shared one, and it remains fragile." "All important things are fragile," the Thrax warrior replied with unexpected philosophy. "That is why they require constant vigilance." Aaliyah smiled. "I never expected to hear such wisdom from a soldier. And I never expected to follow a human into battle against other humans," Kor countered. "We have all been changed by these events." It was true. The crisis had transformed all of them, forcing them to question assumptions, confront prejudices, and discover capacities for both horror and heroism they hadn't known they possessed. "Do you believe it will last?" Aaliyah asked quietly. "This peace we've built?" Kor was silent for a moment, his compound eyes reflecting the starlight. "I believe it will endure if enough of us choose to make it so, day after day, decision after decision." He gestured toward the assembly of different species conversing inside. "Today, enough have chosen. Tomorrow is another choice." Aaliyah nodded, understanding the wisdom in his words. Peace wasn't a destination but a journey, one that required constant recommitment and vigilance against the fears that had driven Project Purge. As she rejoined the assembly, Aaliyah carried with her both the memory of what had nearly been lost and the hope of what might yet be built. No species would ever forget the day humanity chose total war. But perhaps, in time, they would also remember the day that choice was unmade, when extinction gave way to coexistence, and the galaxy's diverse inhabitants recognized themselves in each other. It was enough. It had to be,